On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, does Kyle Kuzma make any sense for the Raptors as a trade target? Plus, more names from the Magical Bull.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, June the 4th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us on the Locked On Raptors Discord server, baby. A great place to come hang out, talk about the draft, talk about trades, talk about off-season machinations, and then just like video games and food and stuff too. It's a great spot, great little community we got built around the show. Would love to see you become part of it. It's free to join. Link is in the description of the podcast. You are always welcome to join us in there. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review on your audio app of choice. You can also find us on YouTube. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. And when you do that, hit the notification bell. You get a push notification every single time the show is about to premiere. And I very much appreciate when you go ahead and do that. Join the live chat. Be part of the little sicko crew in there talking about the show. It's a great thing. And I love you all. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right. Let's get to it. On today's show, we are continuing our now like 2-week-long odyssey of pulling names of potential Toronto Raptors wing targets out of my little berry bowl here. We've got a few left. Thank you, IKEA, for supplying the bowl. We're going to dig through those. We also are going to start off by talking about a guy who was sort of linked to the Raptors in a report yesterday. And so we'll sort of tear back the layers of that onion to kick things off before we start pulling names out of the bowl. And that guy to kick things off is Kyle Kuzma, who was reported yesterday by Brett Siegel, who does a lot of good work, covering the salary cap and is sort of in the ether of guys who will have scoops from time to time, that the Raptors are kind of a team to watch when it comes to Kyle Kuzma, of course, of the Washington Wizards for the last few seasons. And look, this one didn't get me overly enthused, I guess. I'm not like a huge Kyle Kuzma fan, and I do think there are some interesting sort of but like fit things that are kind of concern if this does hold any water. I will say, this is the time of year where all kinds of scuttlebutt gets thrown out into the ether, some of it true, some of it founded in some basis of truth, some of it kind of erroneous and not at all tied to anything. And it's not even the fault of the reporters who put this out either, right? Like they are just kind of getting what they're getting from agents, from teams, whatever it is. And there's a lot of subterfuge going on. You got to sift through basically, kind of to give the annual sort of rundown of the people whose scoops I kind of trust the most. It's Woj, it's Shams, it's Mark Stein, it's Chris Haynes when he's talking about Damian Lillard, and it is Jake Fisher, who's the People's Insider, of course. Beyond that, some people have scoops. Mike Scotto has lots of scoops all the time. There are local beat reporters who will get stuff, but for the most part, unless it's coming from one of those main sort of heavy hitter insiders, I take every little bit of knowledge you get this time of year with a grain of salt. And even the stuff that comes through those guys has to be taken with a grain of salt as well, because every rumor out there has some sort of agenda behind it. It found one of the insiders for some reason with some sort of intention behind passing that information along and the way it's passed along to whomever is receiving it. And so does Kyle Kuzma being linked to the Raptors in a Brett Siegel report mean the Raptors are going to go trade for Kyle Kuzma? No, it doesn't. But it's worth talking about because he is of the size and position we've been talking about for weeks now as the biggest need for the Toronto Raptors. And look, there's a couple of sort of arguments on the side for a Kyle Kuzma trade that I can understand. You start with his contract. It's actually kind of a pretty interestingly structured contract. He's got 2 more years left on it, and it's a declining contract. So it started off around $25 million and declines year over year. Eventually, the final season, $19.4 million in 2026-27. There's no options. There's no club option, team option, whatever. No non-guarantees. It's just this coming season, he makes 23.5. Following year, 21.5, and then 26, 27, 19 million bucks. So 3 years under contract. He would certainly fit the timeline the Raptors have built for themselves here, but I really do question the on-court fit. Just to run through the numbers for Kuzma last couple seasons, he's been kind of one of these good stats, bad teams guys, where, it's kind of hard to decipher where the sort of stank of the Wizards ends and the stank or lack of impact of Kyle Kuzma begins. It's probably more the former that's to blame for sort of underwhelming defensive metrics and underwhelming just overall sort of impact stats. But on a pure box score level, Kyle Kuzma can put it up. 22 points, 6 boards, 6.5 boards, that is, 4 assists last year, career high for him. In the assist department, he shot 34% on 6.4 3-point attempts a game. You have to consider that's a 3-point diet that's coming largely as like the main guy or second to main guy on a very, very bad Wizards team that's probably not creating a ton of really good shots for him. And so maybe there's room for a little bit better from 3-point range for him, throughout his career. It was basically in line with what his career has been, 33.6 last year, 33.7 for his career in 7 years. But, he's capped out around 36 in his best seasons, 2020, 2021 with the Lakers, for example, 36% from deep, shot 37% as a rookie way back in 2017-18. So like he's had moments of being a league average shooter, and he's always been a guy who likes to get him up, career 6 attempts a game. You could use that volume for sure. The percentage, I think it's a bit of a concern when you consider Scottie Barnes' 3-point shot anything but proven at this point. He had a really good half season where he shot the lights out, and then a really bad sort of quarter of a season before he got hurt where it kind of fell off the rails. We don't totally know where he's going to net out as a 3-point shooter, but I do think it's safe to say that the 39-40% clip is probably a little lofty. We saw as he scaled up his role as one of the lead initiators for the Raptors after the Pascal Siakam trade, that's when the decline in his 3-point shooting really came in. It started a little bit before that, in fairness, but he's not getting those great looks created for him by Pascal Siakam. He's having to create a lot of looks for others, and he does that quite well, but he's not much of a pull-up threat, never really has been from deep. And a lot of his threes are going to be those sort of stationary catch and shoots that the other team is pretty happy to concede. If Scottie Barnes is taking a catch and shoot triple and not bounding his way to the rim for a dunk or a little push shot, that's a win for the defense. And so the defense doesn't really care about Scottie's shooting. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl, his shooting is a non-factor. And I do think, as much as I think RJ Barrett's very simplified 3-point diet after the trade was impressive, and he shot 40% and it was amazing, he's another guy that I think teams are pretty okay with just kind of letting him take those wide open threes, because it's preferable to him shooting 10,000% at the rim like he did after the trade. Basically, it's quickly among their starters. Obviously, Kelly Olynyk's got gravity, and Grady Dick certainly has gravity, and that's only going to get even more substantial, I think, as the years go on. But in the starting 5, Quickly is the only guy who has 3-point juice and really makes defenses think. And hey, from your point guard, who's going to be running a lot of possessions, and you want that pull-up threat, that's a great spot to have it, and that's nice. I don't think Kyle Kuzma really offers that same level of space, the same level of, defense bending that you'd like to see from the 5th piece in whatever the starting 5 is going to look like going forward. So as much as the timeline makes sense and the contract is very feasible, you could totally just kind of make a deal around Bruce Brown. And maybe it's Bruce Brown in 31 and a future pick. Maybe it's Bruce Brown in the future Pacers pick, whatever it is. I think there's a case for it just as a pure value play. It's a talent upgrade. He's better than Bruce Brown. He fits their needs a little bit better than Bruce Brown, but I don't think he's by any means some kind of solution to what ails the Raptors. And I do think he kind of would occupy a similar offensive niche to what RJ Barrett already does, where he's like the 3rd guy in the offensive hierarchy, maybe the 4th, depending on the night, but mostly the 3rd. He's going to play mostly off the ball. He's going to run around screens. He's going to finish near the rim. And he's going to be someone who sort of the rest of the team leverages into really good spots with what they do on the floor. I think that's kind of similar to Kuzma, where you probably aren't asking him to have the ball in his hands a ton when you have Quickly and Barnes out there. And I just don't know if he brings enough on the defensive end to really warrant having both him and Barrett kind of occupying similar offensive niches at the 2 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4, whatever positions you're going to call them. I just think that's tough. I think it would probably force Scotty Barnes to have to be that wing defender against the opposing team's best players. I don't think that's an ideal situation. You want him using his ample ability as a low man rim protector and shot blocker to help clean up the messes at the back end, to make life easier on Jakob Poeltl. That's the ideal spot for Scotty Barnes on defense. And Kyle Kuzma, I just don't think has the juice as a wing defender. There's always the element of playing on a really bad team. You're not really a full representation of yourself. You're probably not as motivated. You're not kind of digging in on defense the way you should when you're on the literal Washington Wizards. But I don't think Kuzma's ever really profiled as a great defender. He's maybe had dalliances of being slightly above average, but I think the Raptors have to lean a little bit more into a really good defender at that spot. And frankly, I'm not sure Kyle Kuzma really does it for me. He kind of falls into like the DeAndre sort of Hunter bucket of guys to me, where it's like, okay, they exhaust all of their potential other moves, and he's just kind of like, okay, we'll settle for this for Bruce Brown, and we kind of go forward with that and sort of figure it out from there. That would be fine. I don't think he's the long-term answer there, and frankly, I think Hunter's a better fit if you're comparing the two. But yeah, those are kind of my Kyle Kuzma related thoughts. He was, of course, in the magical bucket. So we're not going to talk about him as a surprise anymore because we had that report to dig into. But I wouldn't put too much stock in this one. I think it's the kind of trade the Raptors should be looking to make. I'm not of the mind they have to go and tank next season. I think they can go out and try to add a real fifth player to their starting five and try to be pretty competitive next season and see where that gets them. And if things go horribly awry, then you have the escape hatch of, oh, we don't owe our pick to the Spurs anyway, so we'll just tank as far as we can and improve our lottery odds. Don't want to see that. Don't want to see another wasted season. I'd like to see competitive ball. So I'm of the mind that trading for a guy of the Kuzma ilk is not the worst idea in the world. And in fact, I'd like to see that. I just don't think Kuzma in himself in particular is maybe the right answer. So we'll come back on the other side. We'll get into some guys who could be the right answer via trade, for agency, or RFA as well, all still remaining in the magical bucket. We'll try to plow through as many as we can here to round out the show as I get the duck timer ready to go. We'll come back in just 1 second, get into that. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the single best place to bet on all of your favorite sports. And right now, it's finals time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. It's that simple. Look, you can go to FanDuel. You can peruse the lines. Of course, the NBA Finals, the Celtics are pretty substantial favorites. You want to win some scratch? I don't think betting on Luka Doncic is like the worst idea in the world. I'm no expert, but I do know Luka Doncic is the best player in this series. Maybe you want to throw some money down on them. Same thing goes kind of similarly in the NHL, where you have the Panthers and the Oilers. Clearly, Connor McDavid, the best player alive on the Oilers, but the Panthers are slight favorites. Maybe throw some money down on the Oilers to go win. You can never go all that wrong betting on the very best players in their sports. And Doncic and McDavid certainly among those in their respective sports. So go check it out. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. Sorry, just locked on, that is. And make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Again, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Back at it here on your Tuesday edition of Locked On Raptors as we continue the week-long now odyssey that has been pulling names out of this bowl and talking about them in 3-minute intervals until the duck speaks. If you're not familiar with the duck, our overlord, it's the timer. It's the alarm I have for some reason on my phone, and I'm just too lazy to change it. And so we'll put 3 minutes on the clock, and we're just going to try to run through as many guys in this bucket as we possibly can to round out the show. First guy on the board. Ooh, this is a fun one. A potential trade candidate. 3 minutes on the clock. Let's go. Dillon Brooks. Oh, Dillon Brooks. A very, very irritating man, whether he's on your team or not. But when he's on your team, I think you put up a little bit with the irritatingness because Dillon Brooks gets it done, man. He's obviously Canada basketball fans know his work quite well. Was fantastic in the World Cup last season, or last summer, that is. And is, the kind of ace wing defender the Toronto Raptors could sorely use. Of course, the passport certainly helps here as well as, it seems pretty clear the Raptors have made it a priority for themselves to say, hey, like, we have this edge. Canadian guys might want to play here and be happy to play here. Maybe we're not at the risk of them being flight risks the same we are with, other players who are not born in Toronto or in Canada. And maybe we go and prioritize this. We've seen Kelly Olynyk say, I just want to play here and retire here. Please bury me under the arena. We've seen RJ Barrett, just totally reinvigorated playing at home. I'm not of the mind that the Raptors should be going and just sort of making every decision through this lens. For example, I'm not a Zach Edey person in the draft. I don't think that's the right pick for the Raptors at 19 or frankly 31. And I don't think they should just go and get every Canadian. I do think there are enough Canadians in the NBA now that we can be a little discerning here and say, hey, that guy's a good fit. That guy's not so much a good fit. We can pick and choose here which ones we want to target. But I do think Dillon Brooks would be a really nice fit. Now, do the Rockets want to trade Dillon Brooks? Probably not at this point. I mean, they're just trying to get competitive right now. He feels like an Ime Udoka guy in that he's a lunatic, and Ime Udoka seems like a bit of a lunatic, and they probably are kind of a match made in heaven player and coach-wise. But, that they clearly made those moves last summer with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks with the intent to be competitive and go to work. And all of a sudden, they also have all these young guys who are really popping for them. Maybe they want to clear way for an Amen Thompson. Maybe they want to clear the way for a Tari Eason if he can get back and healthy. And maybe Dillon Brooks currently stands in the way of that. Maybe there's a way they kind of rebalance things with a Dillon Brooks for Bruce Brown swap or something like that, with other stuff thrown in probably from the Raptors side, where Bruce Brown becomes a really nice piece for a team that's trying to go and win and be successful next season in the Western Conference. I think this is maybe a little bit sort of pie in the sky just because I don't see all that much incentive for Houston to want to trade Dillon Brooks. But if the Raptors went and traded for Dillon Brooks this summer, as much as he's an imperfect player, he has a lot of flaws. His three-point shooting kind of comes and goes. He shot 36% this past season on 5 attempts a game. It's not terrible by any means, but he's also dipped into the low 30s in recent seasons as well. He's a bit of a wild card player, but that's kind of the joy of Dillon Brooks, is he's a bit of a maniac. I think the fit would be fantastic. The defense would be unbelievable to have. He would be that ace wing defender. The Duck has spoken. I don't think this one's happening, but Dillon Brooks, I'm not against it by any means, as the Duck just will not shut up. All right. Let's put more time on the clock. 3 on the clock. Let's pull it out of another name out of that bowl. The bowl, that is. Here we got. Okay. This one's all right. Talen Horton-Tucker. Talen Horton-Tucker, of course. Remember way back in the hell season that was Tampa. Talen Horton-Tucker was at one point the Raptors are going to trade Kyle Lowry for this guy. It's going to be the guy that they fix things with, and they go forward with him as the long-term Kyle Lowry replacement. I think I'm fine with them having not done that, frankly. But interesting player is Kyle Kuzma. He's an unrestricted free agent this summer, so he could be had just for money. And there's no restrictions on trying to go offer whatever money you want to him. He's long. He's not tall. He's 6'4", but he has arms for days, and he's still only 23 years old somehow. He's so young. He feels like he's been around forever. Obviously, that Tampa season felt like it was eons ago, and he was a prospect then. Frustrating player. I think maybe kind of thinks a little bit more of himself than he actually is. And I just speak as a guy who had him on my fantasy team last year. Really maddening guy where it's this guy had an incredible night where he goes for 14 points and 6 assists and 9 rebounds. And he's kind of filling all the boxes and doing everything. And then he falls out of the rotation for reasons on that Utah team kind of every other week too. Really, really kind of frustrating player. I think probably if you're signing Talen Horton-Tucker, it's you do it with a chunk of the mid-level. You're not doing the full mid-level for Talen Horton-Tucker. He's coming off a deal that just paid him $11 million a year this past season. I don't think he's worth probably that much as the league sort of value shooting and creation a little bit more. I mean, he has some creation juice to him. There's not no creation there. Obviously, he can sort of set guys up and work and kind of get into the paint, things like that. But also, he did that on a Jazz team that was not especially good, and I don't think they were at their best when he was playing for them. He also doesn't really shoot very well. Shot 33% this past season from deep on 3.6 attempts. That his career high from deep. So he's not a shooting threat by any means. And I do think on this team where there's already a lot of shooting questions, I don't know if you can just go and throw what is maybe your best asset this summer as far as acquiring players just via free agency, which is your mid-level exception, in the event they keep Bruce Brown and Gary Trent Jr., which maybe seems less likely by the day, especially on the Bruce Brown front. It seems like maybe they can actually get something real for him. But I just think the lack of shooting from Talen Horton-Tucker does kind of give me pause. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Nice rotation piece, a guy who can come in, maybe kind of give you some secondary creation in the second unit, things like that. He is long, like maybe there's some defensive upside that hasn't quite been tapped into by the Lakers or the Jazz with him just yet. And again, he's just 23 years old. But if I'm rating this one on the scale of wings, like we tried to do in the first one, and I kind of lost the plot on that as we went along, this one's probably like a 4 or 5 to me as far as how into it I would be with Talen Horton-Tucker. It's just not my favorite fit, just not my kind of cup of tea of player, and the duck has spoken. We'll come back on the other side. We'll run through a few more of these bad boys to round out the show. I can't tease exactly who because it's a mystery, baby. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And look, sometimes you just got to get something off your chest. Maybe you're dealing with, a kind of hurdle in your daily life. You can't quite get going on a thing you want to get going on. Maybe there's a relationship in your life that you feel like you need to give a little bit more TLC to. Maybe there's a big job decision looming that you have to sort of make a decision in line with the values that you want to uphold in your life. That's all there. Of course, there's major trauma you got to deal with at times too. It's very unfortunate, but it happens. And therapy can be there to help you with all of those things, big and small. It is a way to help you just kind of get the stressors in your life off your chest, talk about it with someone who is there, who's an expert, who's professional, to help you get to the core of the issues you're facing and make decisions in line with the kind of person you want to be so you can live the life that you want to live. It's a beautiful thing. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, back at it, rounding it out here, taking a few more names out of the magical berry bowl, courtesy our Swedish pals at IKEA, full of potential Raptors wing targets who we'll try to plow through as many as we can here to round out the show. Next one up here. This one's probably a bit not going to happen, but let's talk about him quickly. Maybe we put like a minute on the clock for this one because I just don't think it's super realistic. Tari Eason. Tari Eason, of course, wing for the Houston Rockets, kind of a 3-4 hybrid type, super duper athletic. I think has like pretty extreme defensive upside. Missed a lot of this past season with a bone injury in his leg that he had to get some surgery on. He only played 22 games. And I think there is a little bit of concern if you kind of read stuff coming out of Houston that the injury is maybe of some concern long-term. Who knows? He's also very young, and guys get over things early in their careers all the time that seem like they're going to be death knells. He's 23. As far as like a young guy to take a shot on, if the Rockets are looking to kind of clear space for other guys on that team, they've obviously got the 3rd overall pick in the draft this year too, which is an interesting consideration. Like, are they going to fill up more on the wings? Are they going to go take a Ron Holland or a Zachary Risacher if he's there? It doesn't seem like he'll be there. Or one of the other wings we've talked about. Like, does that clear the space? And does Tari Eason become kind of like a buy low where the Rockets are sort of hung up? I think if that's the case, 100% you go and try to do what you can. I might even, it's risky to offer a 1st round pick, but like 31 in this year's draft, does that interest the Rockets at all? I think Tari Eason, one of the more interesting sort of young guy flyers, kind of in the Moses Moody bucket of dudes, who, if you can get him in there and he's cheap and you have some time to work with them, maybe that's a guy that you can really kind of turn into a player over the coming years. But I think he's already kind of a player, and I kind of think the Rockets should just keep him. Anyway, the Ducks spoke. I can't keep talking. Let's keep going here. Next one here. I pulled out 2 by accident. This one is very interesting. Let's put 3 minutes on the clock for this. Jonathan Isaac. Of course, Orlando Magic big man who was very, very good this season. Those in the know who watched more Magic games than I did. Frankly, I don't find the Magic to be an interesting watch at all. But, there was a lot of noise out there of best per minute defender in the NBA. Clearly, Jonathan Isaacs. I'm a big believer that like the best defender in the NBA needs to just like be on the floor for more than 16 minutes a game, which is what Jonathan Isaac played this past season. But you cannot argue with the defense. He is a nasty, nasty long defender who I think would fit as a small ball 5 next to Kelly Olynyk. You could run a front court of Scotty Barnes and Jonathan Isaac and just block every shot in existence. He can slide up on the positional spectrum, play on the 3, and kind of be more of a wing stopper type. There's a lot of just immense defensive ability in Jonathan Isaac. Of course, the issue with him, he's played 69 games since 2019-20. 58 of which came last year, missed 2 full seasons, then played 11 games in 2022-23. We like the health stuff is very real here with Jonathan Isaac. He's going into the last year of his contract. And as much as he was a very effective player for that Magic team last year, I do think there's like a pretty open question as to can they keep him around long term? They've obviously got a loaded front court already with Franz and Paolo Banchero going to be the 3 and 4 for that team for the rest of time, one would think. They've got a lot of bigs to kind of worry about with Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Wagner's really good. Do they keep Goga Batadze? Probably not. He's a pretty interesting stealth guy for the Raptors to go pursue. And obviously Isaac makes $17 million this coming season. Maybe, just maybe, there's something there with Bruce Brown. If you're trying to find a Bruce Brown package, maybe Bruce Brown offers a little bit sort of more guard play to a guard starved team there in Orlando. I'm not sure here's the exact kind of guard they need. They need someone more dynamic, someone with more pull-up three-point shooting juice, and who can kind of, I think, balance out the lack of offensive production they have from a lot of the rest of the roster. I don't think that's Bruce Brown's bag necessarily, but you can squint and see something there as like a potential match. I do think the shooting stuff with Isaac is a concern. I mean, he shot well this season. He shot 38% from deep. And I guess he's been a less bad three-point shooter when he's been on the floor than I kind of give him credit for. He shot 35% as a rookie. He shot 32% in the second year. 2019-20, he shot 34% before going down with that injury that kept him out. So like he's not been miserable from deep, but he's also not someone defenses are going to care about. And even though he shot 38% this past season, he did so on just 1.9 attempts a game. So, and, per minute, he's playing 30 minutes a game, which I don't know if he's ever going to be able to play. That gets you up to about 4 threes a game. That's nice. But I don't know if the 3-point production there is something that can really be trusted. I don't think it's something defenses really are going to care about. So Jonathan Isaac, I think I only put 1 minute on the clock by accident. No, I put 3. Never mind. I'm just talking my ear off about Jonathan Isaac over here. But yeah, I think Isaac is kind of one of those fallback guys. I don't know what the appetite of the Magic is going to be to move him. Maybe they just want him on their team to maintain their unbelievable defense. But if you're looking for a big to kind of complement Kelly Olynyk, maybe the Raptors take a big in the draft and they want to sort of groom him along and take some time with him. Maybe Jonathan Isaac on a 1-year flyer to see what he does in his final year before free agency. It's not the worst thing in the world. There's lots of stuff out there about Jonathan Isaac, maybe not being the most beloved teammate in the world. I'll let you go and Google that stuff. But just as a pure player, yeah, incredible defensive player. The fit's tricky because of the shooting not being certain. But the defense would no doubt be seriously upgraded by Jonathan Isaac being around, no doubt. All right, let's get to a couple more here, round it out. We've got this one here. Oh, this one's fun. Isaac Okoro, an RFA from the Cleveland Cavaliers, who this past season kind of shed the moniker of being a miserable three-point shooter. He shot 39% on 3.1 attempts a game. Again, not the kind of shooting or threat that a defense is going to care about. They're going to be thrilled if they're funneling open threes to Isaac Okoro, whether he's on the Cavs, whether he's on the Raptors. Like, that's his lot in life until he has a couple more seasons, I think, of sustained three-point shooting success. But you cannot argue with how promising 39% is on 3.1 attempts a game for a guy who started 42 games for a good Cavs team. And he's a really, really good defender. Maybe a little undersized. He's like 6'5". He's not like the sort of hulking 6'8", 6'9" wing stopper you'd love to see, but he would certainly upgrade the defense. You could play him as your 3, push RJ Barrett's responsibilities to the 2, even though I guess they're kind of similar heights, or maybe Barrett's even a little bit bigger, but Okoro plays bigger, defensively at least, than Barrett does by far. And if he's getting open looks and hitting them, like, that's valuable. That's more than what they're getting in the current situation where I mean, I guess Gary Trent Jr. hits wide open threes, but he also doesn't offer any defense. So there's the trade-off there. I think the tricky thing is he's an RFA, right? Like, RFAs do not move. RFAs rarely change teams, and offer sheets tend to have to be pretty punitive to both the team that, has a guy that's an RFA and both the team who's trying to lure him away because of the rules of RFA. Like it's just really hard to structure a deal that is good for your own team that then convinces the other team to say, oh, well, I'm not touching that. Like take them. You're talking like Alan Crabb level contracts or, some of those really bad deals that have been handed out over the years in RFA, mostly by the Brooklyn Nets, apparently. Like it's just really difficult to lure guys away with RFA deals because unless you're structuring it in a way that actively damages your own books, it's a really hard thing to get a guy pried away from a team that can just match any deal that comes across their table. With Okoro, I think there's maybe a bit of a window because the Cavs have so much on the go this summer, so many irons in the fire. Are they trading Darius Garland? Are they going to extend Donovan Mitchell? Are they going to trade Jared Allen? Like they have a million things happening. Maybe you could just kind of sneak in there stealthily day one of free agency and hey, how about 4 years 60, Isaac Okoro? What you think? And then maybe that, not that the Cavs would just like not notice that he was offered a deal. That's not how front offices work. It may be in a bygone era where front offices were really bad and fax machines were heavily in use. Maybe that's a thing that could happen. Not going to happen in the modern NBA because everyone's too smart, which sucks. Everyone should be dumber. It would be way more fun. But maybe just because of all the stuff that the Cavs got to worry about this summer, you throw a little offer sheet to Isaac Okoro, and maybe you can get him on your team without it being a super damaging contract to your own books. I probably wouldn't go higher than 18, 20 million bucks for him at the very high end. 15 probably feels like the sweet spot. And frankly, the Cavs probably match 15. But, there's nothing really as far as like opportunity cost to just go offer it. The window for RFA is much shorter than it used to be. It's like 24 hours to match. And I don't think the Raptors have like a ton of great upside opportunities with their cap space anyway. And so if they wanted to say, hey, all our eggs are going in the Isaac Okoro basket with our cap space, I could see that being kind of an interesting move. Again, not sexy, not perfect, doesn't fix the team or anything, but certainly upgrades the wing defense, which is a thing they badly need. And if he's a real shooter, then that's a real thing. All right, last one here for the day. Let's get to it. Another RFA. This one's fun too. Patrick Williams of the Chicago Bulls. Look, I think Patrick Williams is one of the more polarizing guys in the NBA. I think a lot of people believe in him, and I think a lot of people simply just don't think he's good. I'm probably more on the side of believing in him a little bit. He's 22 years old. He's so young. He's been playing on a not very good Bulls team, not very interesting Bulls team. He's had some injury stuff, obviously missed most of his second season, only played 17 games as a sophomore. Came back and played 82 the following year, very encouraging, then missed a bunch of time this past year, played 43. So the health, I think, is a bit of a question mark. He's been either very durable or not at all durable, and it's hard to kind of parse. He also feels like he's kind of stagnated as a player. He's been basically the same guy every year of his career, around 10 points, around 4 boards, around an assist and a half, around a steal, around a block. But he also shoots around 40% from 3, basically like clockwork. It's not on a huge volume, just 3.4 attempts a game over the last 2 seasons, but 41.5% and 39.9% the last 2 years. Like, that's not nothing. You can't like fake that. And for this, at this point, he's at like nearly 600 career attempts from deep, shooting 41%. Usually it takes about 1,000 attempts for things to really stabilize. But even if he shoots like 35% from here to the rest of his 1,000 attempts, like, he's going to be a high 30s 3-point shooter. That's like something you can build on. He's also huge, right? He's like 6'7", 6'8". He's thick as hell. I think there's some actual kind of upside potential here for Patrick Williams. The Bulls probably just match anything for him because of that upside, because he is one of their few avenues to youthful improvement on top of Kobe White. Maybe you can't lure him away. Maybe it's not like the Cavs where they got other priorities. Pat Williams might be one of the higher priorities for the Chicago Bulls, but I think there's a pretty interesting case for just kind of throwing an offer sheet his way, similar to the Okoro one, right? If it's 4 years 60, 4 years 70, something like that. Maybe the Bulls just match without it thinking, but the 4 years might be a lot. The injury stuff, maybe that plays on them. And again, like, this is the challenge with RFAs, is all the reasons why another team might match a deal or not match it are the same reasons why you should feel good or bad about the contract being on your own books. So, if the Bulls are like, yeah, take him, go nuts, maybe you're sitting there with quick buyer's remorse being like, oh no, what did we just do? But I do think there's more for Patrick Williams to give than he's given so far. There's the Florida State connection with Scotty Barnes. I don't really think that matters all that much. I don't even think they played together at any point at college. I think they were freshmen in back-to-back years. But yeah, I think Pat Williams is one of my favorite kind of potential dudes to go look at this summer. Not a perfect player by any means, but you're not getting a perfect player to fill out these lineups going forward. And if Patrick Williams is in there as your 3, or 4, I guess, and is sort of knocking down 40% of his threes and offering decent wing defense, you could do a whole lot worse. The duck has spoken. The podcast is over. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for rocking with the show. As always, we appreciate you very, very much for all of your patronage. Please follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you support the show. However it is you support the show. We'll be back again tomorrow. TBD on the content. Hopefully Katie Heindel's along, but I think she might be traveling right now. So we'll figure something out. Either way, lots of draft stuff to keep on getting into. Jamar Hines will be along again later this week. And William Liu, our dear pal from Hello and Welcome, is going to be on the show on Friday, which I'm very excited for. It's been a while since I chatted with my old pal Lou. Old pal Will. His name's not Lou. That's Lou Williams. I mix that up all the time. We're friends, I promise. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I will talk to you again on Wednesday, another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Oh, that's a brick.